No, I was just going to say, Henry, I mean, the one thing that in the film is there's the observation that you stand with people and study the things they create. And I'm just intrigued again. I mean, it is 1972. It is Fermanagh. You're an American. There can't be many Americans wandering around the borderlands in 1972.
I'm sure not.
In terms of that idea, you talk there about the beauty of the landscape, of the people. Is that, I'm just intrigued about that observation point you have, where you do seem to stand back and watch and look. What is it what were you looking for anything in Fermanagh, or really was it, once you land there as a folklorist and anthropologist, is it a blank page where you just take it as it goes for the year? I mean, that's by what journey you were on.
That's close. It is in a sense a blank page, but it's not. Why did I want to be in the borderland in the time of the Troubles? I was interested to see how regular people endure history. I did have a reason to be there. I did have I could have been anywhere in Ireland. I could have been in Leitrim. I could have been anywhere. I was in Fermanagh. All I had was that's a very general order by myself to myself, is that history should be rectified by contact with real people. And I was going to go into a place full of trouble. Believe me, that was a territory that was extremely active, to say it very simply. I didn't know that, but what I wanted to do was to be with people who were enduring hard times and seeing how they actually lived. That's not quite a blank page, but it's a very large order. But what they did was not a concern of mine. Where they found their interests, that was my concern. What I really wanted to do, and what I've done not only in Ireland, but subsequently, especially in Turkey and Bangladesh, I've done the same thing. I've gone to places maybe people would consider them to be primarily places of poverty, and I've found them places of unbelievable wealth, of great depth and beauty. That's just the truth. But I didn't know what was going to say it simply, I didn't know what was going to make beauty in Ballymonone.
This notion, Henry, of reflecting on the present through talking about the past is really a rather wonderful one. And it really opens up very strange questions about how time is perceived there and the relationship between time and place. And I wonder if that's something that can help the rest of us as we think about the world that we're in and the troubles that are about us.
Well, I can certainly say, I would say yes, but that would be a sort of a silly answer. They entailed time in space. For them, the prime dimension was spatial. I mean, you think about this as an Irish move, and it goes all the way back. But they thought about time as being a part of space. What did that mean? It was absolutely relevant. That is, if you think about dates, they had the dates. They were a little bit rough about the dates, but they had the dates. They knew that this happened in more or less the late 16th century, but they knew exactly where it took place. And by knowing exactly where it takes place, when I cross over the bridge over the Little Arne River and look to my right and know that that was where a great battle took place in 1829, it didn't take place in 1829. It took place 1 minute ago when I crossed that bridge. A thing that I think that they definitely would offer to us generally as an understanding of history is to think of it first as spatial rather than temporal. Because that spatial history will gather you in, and it means that all the history is relevant. It's not an irrelevance of the past, this distance from us by a chronology. It's rather happening right now, and by happening right now, it puts upon us immediate moral demands.
One of the reviews of the film I was reading said that Henry can find and celebrate the art created by everyday people, the rug makers in Turkey, potters and statue makers in Salvador, or Irish storytellers. I mean, is this what you're really talking about when you talk about, music in Bangladesh or a parade on the 12th. Is the key thing here the power of the everyday, that art doesn't have to be exceptional high art? It is almost that kind of craft-like belief in, to use one of the words you used earlier, that kind of decency of labor that goes into art, that makes it every day. And have you found that then becomes in all your travels a kind of a global leveler, that there's a point where the everyday and people involved in the everyday is part and parcel of the human condition?
Oh, I absolutely think that. I absolutely. You see, I think that, or very simply said about art, it flows from need. It doesn't come out of the sky. It flows from deep need. We need to eat, therefore let's make a good dinner. We need to have clothing, let's make beautiful clothing. We need to have shelter, let's make a beautiful house. Let's make a really beautiful house and let's call it a cathedral. So that I think it all comes out of daily need. It's not something other than daily need. One of the daily needs certainly is self-expression. But for the most part, I think it does begin in craft. I think all of art has a commencement in craft. And to think of something as merely craft is absurd, because what is really going on in human existence is that craft will carry us through every day of our lives. You've got to have breakfast. You've got to have dinner. You've got to be warm. And that's where it begins. It begins there, and it's pressed and it's pushed and it's magnified and it's made glorious. But it's all deeply rooted in everyday needs of people. We have to be able to handle stone in order to build a house, or we can make a statue. It's that's exactly what I feel. That so that it's one of the things that it's every day in the sense that everybody has a right to it. It's not every day in the sense that everybody does it well. And that I think that's also a wonderful thing. That is to say, we started off this conversation to some extent by saying, my excitement about coming to Ireland had to do with literature. That has to do with mastery of language.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is, and I agree entirely with Noam Chomsky, language is the definitive trait of all of human beings. Everybody has it. There is no difference in race or gender or anything. Everybody has got the ability to speak the language. Animals don't. That's us. That's who we are. And if you can take that everyday capacity to speak and convert it into Finnegan's Wake, that's wonderful. But if you just say something articulate and grammatical to your next door neighbor, that's pretty great too. So it's not exactly communication. It's much more a matter of expression. And Chomsky argues, and I agree, that language isn't really primarily about communication. It's primarily about thinking. And so that you develop a language in order to be able to compass a complex idea. If you only had to communicate, you could, like Wittgenstein says, well, you could just say hammer and that someone would hand you a hammer. But if you want to say, hand me the hammer, I'd really like to have it, something is happening and something extra is happening. And so that I think that art is extra, but it's grounded in the absolutely conventional everyday. And it's the reason why, this is now a sort of methodological bit, it's the reason why I don't care where I go. I know it's going to be there. In other words, I don't have to think, where do they make art? I just have to go to any community in the world, and I know that that community will teach me what they think art is.